Do you remember being born? I do. I remember the moments before and thinking that, do I want to do this or not? Because it's not a short-term thing, it's quite permanent. And then making the decision, yes, I'm going to, and tobogganing down to the incarnation. Then I remember a few moments after the birth, reaching out with my arm and hand to touch something. There's a few others that remember their birth, but it's not common. But remembering it tells me there is something before birth. So I am energy. And I went into a physical body. And then when I was quite young, I went to my dad one day and I said, "What did you do with my shelf?" And he says, "What shelf?" Dad was a builder, so he liked to talk about those sorts of things. I said, "You know, the shelf that was always up in the corner of the room, top hand right corner." And he looked at me, he says, "Ewart, there was never a shelf up there." And I explained to him, "Well, that's the shelf I used to sit on at night time when you guys were sitting by the fire. And I'd watch what you were doing." And he says, "But you were just a little baby and there was no shelf up there." Now that tells me there's such a thing as out-of-body experiences. While I was sleeping in my cot in my mother and father's room, I wasn't sleeping at all. I was travelling and sitting on the shelf. My soul or energy was. And then when I was a little older, my mother come to me one day and she says, "It's time for you to be in your own room." I thought, okay, that sounds great. So we moved everything and she set up my new room, and then we went back to her bedroom where the cot was to get the last things. I remember carrying a blanket back to my room, and I says to her, "What about my horses?" She says, "What horses?" I says, "You know, the picture of my horses that was always above my bed." She says, "Ewart, there was never a picture of horses above your bed." So I described it to her exactly what it looked like. She went white. And then she got a little stool and she climbed up on the wardrobe, the freestanding wardrobe in the bedroom, brought down a parcel that was wrapped up in newspaper and dusted it off and opened it and showed me the picture. I said, "Yes, that's the picture of my horses." She said, "That's your grandfather's photo. It was always above his bed." So now I knew that not only was I energy before I incarnated, that I was soul, but I had a lifetime before this lifetime. And then I used to talk to friends. I used to ask them advice. They were always around me and I could ask them anything. When I started school, I talked to other children about, did they remember being born? None of them did. What about your friends? No, none of them knew about their friends either. But some of them said, well, you were talking to your angels, or you were talking to your imaginary friends. Others said, you don't have any friends. But anyway, I just kept talking to them because they gave me great advice and they were very helpful. It's interesting because Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, refers to his mastermind group. So he was talking about his friends and he used them during meditation, which is great. You see, life's so much easier if you work with these guys and become more and more aware of your own inner abilities. It's like the plant manager in a big factory, you know, looking for a really good manager. Often they'll say, I want somebody who knows how much raw material to order before we get the orders in. Now, how can somebody know how much raw material to order before the orders come in? Or the chef, who has to be a really good chef. He has to know how much meat and poultry to order before the customers come. The owner of the restaurant doesn't want to waste any food. Now, if you said to those people, so what you're really looking for is someone who's psychic, they'd say, no, I just want a good plant manager, or I just want a good chef, not somebody who's psychic. So it's common. You know, we're all energy in a physical body, and we all have inner guidance working with us. But not all of us are aware of it. That's the thing, becoming aware of it. As I went through life, I started to think, gee, I'm alone. Am I the only one that has the ability to use these things in a real aware way? So imagine my delight when in the early 80s I found there was an organisation, the Inner Peace Movement, where thousands of people worked with their angels and learnt about ESP and psychic nature and how to work with it in their everyday life. It's a bonus, and it's a great achievement to be able to refine all those skills. So now I spend time starting classes and helping others learn about their own inner abilities. I remember one of the first classes I started probably in the mid-80s to late 80s. We started the class, it was with a family, and the whole family got involved. It was the mother, the father, the son and the daughter. And this class went for around 12 weeks. At the end of the class, the son come to me and he says, you know what? He says, we're a real family now. We're working with each other, we work as a team, and we really know how to communicate with each other. I was delighted. I'd helped that family understand themselves so much better. So if any of these things make sense to you and you want to know more, please email me. My email is Ewart, EWARTG @gmail.com.